Hi, it's Patrick Hutzel from IntensiveCareHotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives for families of critically ill patients in intensive care, so that you can make informed decisions, have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. This is another episode of Your Questions Answered, and in last week's episode I answered another question from one of our readers, and the question last week was: my 59-year-old dad is in ICU after cardiac arrest. He had to be resuscitated for 18 minutes. Will he have brain damage? You can check out the answer to last week's question by clicking on the link below this video. In this week's episode of Your Questions Answered, I want to answer another question from one of our readers, and the question this week is: my uncle is in multi-organ failure after 3 weeks in ICU. He's ventilated with a tracheostomy, on hemodialysis, and he's not waking up. Everything seems to go wrong. What do we need to do? This question is an excerpt from a one-to-one phone, Skype and counselling session with me. So, Melanie writes: Hi Patrick, my uncle was taken into ICU as we found him dazed and confused on the 20th of May, so it's nearly been 3 weeks now. He had sepsis, then multiple organ failure. He was sedated on the first day, then left under sedation for the majority of the time during the 3 weeks. With him going into multi-organ failure, his kidneys failed and he had to go on to hemodialysis on and off. He also was on the ventilator with the breathing tube and had sedation stopped. But after 4 days of no signs of him waking up and being alert after sedation was stopped, but him still being restless and agitated and not breathing well on the ventilator, he had to be resedated and taken for a full body CT scan. His CT scans were all normal, so he had a tracheostomy fitted and again had sedation stopped. After that, he has been opening his eyes, but looks like he's seeing things that aren't there, and we are no good at lip reading, and he has no strength to write things down, and he's not really responsive. He keeps moving his jaw from side to side. His kidneys are now working. He's only on 30% oxygen from the ventilator, but he has a constant high temperature up to 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And his heart rate sometimes can go as high as 160 beats per minute. The staff in ICU have given up trying to find out why nothing even showed up on the CT scan. He's a very overweight man, so I guess this goes against him, as they keep telling me. But I would really like to know what to do. And I'm so worried that he has lost his mind, because he stares up at the ceiling and seems to move his jaw from side to side. It's currently day 5 with no sedation, and he started following a few of the nurses and our family's commands. We are wondering if this is withdrawal from sedation, and sometimes he obeys commands, then he goes back to sleep. 2 seconds later he comes around and stares into space. It's been 2 days now and no sedation. How long do you think it can take for him to wake up and recover and hopefully get off the ventilator and the tracheostomy? Every time we feel we get somewhere with him, something else seems to go wrong. Now they're talking about doing a lumbar puncture tomorrow morning. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Please help. Many thanks. From Melanie. So here's my response. Hi Melanie, I'm sorry to hear about the difficult situation that you and your uncle are dealing with in intensive care. It's great to see that you're taking action though, and it's great to see that you're seeking help through my one-on-one phone and Skype counselling and consulting service. Multi-organ failure is always challenging, and it's of sepsis. Sepsis is a severe infection that causes all major organs to fail, including the kidneys. You are mentioning that every time we feel we get somewhere with him, something else seems to go wrong, and I can see how that might give you a pessimistic outlook. The reality in intensive care when it comes to sepsis and multi-organ failure is that it can be a long journey and that it's often 2 steps forward and 1 step back. 3 weeks in ICU after multi-organ failure and sepsis may seem like an eternity for you and your family. However, in the bigger scheme of things and in intensive care terms, it's not a very long time, and it sounds to me like the intensive care team hasn't really determined the cause of the multi-organ failure and sepsis. This is most likely why they want to do a lumbar puncture as well, to A, find out whether CSF, and CSF is fluids in the spine and the brain, may have been a cause leading to sepsis or meningitis. And B, if that's the case, it would also explain why your uncle hasn't woken up, as the brain might be affected through things like meningitis and or increased brain pressures. Therefore, there's a high chance that your uncle simply hasn't woken up because he's still going through withdrawal from the sedation, and he's taking his time to wake up after the induced coma. However, even though it may feel like a lifetime for you and your family, not waking up after 3 weeks in ICU in an induced coma with multi-organ failure is not a very long time at all, and sometimes critically ill patients in intensive care in an induced coma with multi-organ failure, on dialysis, etc., may be in ICU for weeks or sometimes months to come. You have also mentioned that your uncle has been on sedation and in an induced coma for most of the time. Therefore, given his high level of critical illness, it doesn't surprise me at all that your uncle hasn't woken up yet. Multi-organ failure and sepsis is life-threatening on every level. Therefore, for now, look at the positives and look at the situation that your uncle is alive. Many critically ill patients in intensive care will die with multi-organ failure. It also sounds to me like the intensive care unit is trying their best to save your critically ill uncle's life. Many intensive care units would give up early on with all the challenges your uncle is facing. Therefore, it sounds to me like you, your family and your uncle are in the right place at the right time. Just by what you are describing, they seem to have taken all the right steps by trying to wake him up after the induced coma, and when he wouldn't wake up, they were doing the full body CT scan, and then they were doing the tracheostomy. In the meantime, they were giving him dialysis for his kidney failure twice to take over the function of his failing kidneys. So, be patient, get as much information as possible, keep asking questions and keep educating yourself. Most of all, don't panic and keep educating yourself on the topic and the issues. Also, Melanie, research suggests that in 1/3 of all cases of sepsis and multi-organ failure, no cause can be found. Furthermore, up to 40% of ICU patients with sepsis may die. Therefore, with your uncle being alive, after 3 weeks in ICU, you should keep looking at the positives. I have been consulting a client a while back in a different but somewhat similar situation where the client's mum was in ICU for 3 or 4 months, and the client at the time thought that her mum would die from the severe critical illness. My client and her mum went through many ups and downs during her stay in ICU, including sepsis, multi-organ failure after lung failure and ARDS, ECMO, including going through delirium, ICU psychosis and not waking up for many weeks. Reading through my other clients or watching my other clients' case study might be helpful to give you more perspective around the topic of sepsis and waking up in ICU after prolonged and severe critical illness. Therefore, again, be patient. So I have put some links in the written version of this blog to the other case study. If it's of interest to you, just go down, and scroll down in the blog and click on the link. I know, Melanie, this is all easier said than done, but please stay with your uncle for now and stay strong. Give him time. Hopefully the intensive care team can rule out meningitis or any other brain-related issues that may prevent your uncle from not waking up. Once they have ruled out any brain-related issues, such as meningitis and or raised brain pressures, there's a very high chance that your uncle is just withdrawing from the medications he has had during the induced coma. On top of that, his body would be considerably weakened after the sepsis and the multi-organ failure. This combination is a recipe for not waking up quickly, ICU delirium, confusion, agitation and fighting the ventilator. I have seen this over and over again. It's really all about having perspective in this situation, Melanie, and it's really all about letting you know that situations like this occur in ICU and people do survive this ordeal. There's no guarantee, of course. However, there is improvement, and I believe that just by what you are describing, they're doing all the right things and they're not giving up. Furthermore, what you haven't mentioned is that with sepsis and multi-organ failure, your uncle would have been or may still be on inotropes. Inotropes are intravenous drugs given via a central line to increase a low blood pressure and to improve the contractility of the heart. With sepsis and multi-organ failure, the heart would be affected as well because of septic shock, and one of the signs is usually a low blood pressure that can be life-threatening as well. Therefore, your uncle's heart would have been or still is on inotropes. Therefore, again, give your uncle time. Time is often the ultimate healer. If they can't find a cause for the sepsis, let your uncle wake up in his own time, and once he's more alert, then they can focus on getting him off the ventilator and the tracheostomy. Take one step at the time and take it day by day. Again, being patient and persistent is one of your biggest assets in this challenge. I think you and your family are doing great by trying to support your uncle through this. Give me an update when there are news, or if you need anything in the meantime, please let me know and we can have another chat. Take care. So, how can you become the best advocate for your critically ill loved one? Make informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence quickly whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. You get to that all-important feeling of making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence when you download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you learn quickly how to make informed decisions, get peace of mind, real power and real control, and how you can influence decision making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free instant impact report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free instant impact report now by entering your email below. In your free instant impact report, you learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that the doctors and the nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you will also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions, discover the many competing interests in intensive care, and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests. How to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. You get 5 mind-blowing tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to making informed decisions, get peace of mind, control, power and influence in your situation. You'll get real-world examples so that you can easily adapt to your and your critically ill loved one's situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You'll get crucial behind the scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's Your Questions Answered episode, and I'll see you again in another update next week. Make sure you also check out our blog section for more tips and strategies, or send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com with your questions. Or you can call me, find international phone numbers on our contacts tab. Also check out our ebook section where you get more ebooks, videos and audio recordings, and where you can also get one-on-one counselling and consulting with me via Skype, over the phone or via email by clicking on the products tab. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll see you again next week in another update.